chosen one, you are not here by accident, and you are not listening to these words because life has simply pushed you into one more tired moment. This is a pause that heaven has allowed. This is a breath that God has placed between your pain and your decision. You were not meant to give up. You were not created to collapse at the very edge of the thing God spoke over your life before you ever knew how to name it. Right now, in the middle of your weariness, in the middle of your questions, in the middle of the silent fight you have not been able to explain to anybody, God is making one thing clear. He is not done with you. You may have felt forgotten. You may have felt as though the doors stayed closed for too long, the prayers stayed unanswered for too long, and the pressure on your heart became heavier than what you thought you could carry. You may have smiled in front of people while breaking in private. You may have told yourself to stay strong while something inside you slowly started to unravel. And yet, even there, even in that place, even in that hour when your strength felt thin and your hope felt fragile, the hand of God did not move away from you. The Lord who called you is still the Lord who keeps you. The God who started this story is still writing it. There is a reason the battle became so intense. There is a reason the pressure increased when you were already exhausted. There is a reason the voice of defeat started whispering with such urgency, telling you to let go, to stop believing, to pull back, to expect nothing, to settle for less, to call your delay the end. Darkness does not waste that kind of effort on something empty. The enemy does not fight what carries no future. The resistance around your life has been trying to convince you that your struggle is proof of abandonment, but the truth is the opposite. The fight has been fierce because your life still carries weight. Your future still carries impact. Your yes still carries power. You have survived days that should have broken you. You have walked through emotional valleys that no one fully saw. You have endured disappointment, confusion, betrayal, and long stretches of waiting that made you wonder whether your tears were falling on silent ground. But listen carefully. God has counted every one of those tears. He has watched every silent prayer. He has seen every time you kept going with a trembling heart. He has seen the nights when you lay awake trying to understand why the road became so hard. None of it was wasted. None of it disappeared into nothing. Heaven has records of your endurance. That is why this moment matters. You are standing in a place where your emotions may be telling you one thing, but the Spirit of God is telling you another. Your feelings may say it is over. Your fear may say you have missed too much time. Your exhaustion may say there is no reason to keep trying. But God says you are still in process. God says your calling has not expired. God says your purpose was not canceled by pain, delayed by opposition, or erased by the mistakes and misunderstandings of your journey. What He placed in you still lives. What He promised still stands. What He began still matters. Do not measure your life only by what has not happened yet. Do not decide your future by what did not work before. Do not call yourself finished because a chapter was painful. Some of the deepest spiritual battles happen right before clarity returns. Some of the hardest seasons come just before direction becomes visible again. What feels like the end is often the place where God strips away the voices that lied to you so you can hear Him more clearly than before. He will not let the fire consume what He intends to anoint. He will not allow the storm to erase what He has written in His will for your life. And this is why you must guard your heart in this hour. Not because you are weak, but because you are valuable. Not because your faith is fake, but because your destiny is alive. There are moments when giving up can look reasonable to the natural mind. There are moments when walking away can seem easier than believing one more day. But chosen one, ease is not your assignment. Surrender to despair is not your portion. You were not born to agree with defeat. You were born to rise through places that should have buried you. You were born to stand after attacks that were supposed to silence you. You were born to carry a light that does not come from circumstances, but from the God who formed you with intention. So let this truth settle deeply into your spirit. The fact that you are still here means something. The fact that your heart still responds means something. The fact that something inside you still longs for God, still reaches for hope, still wants to believe, still refuses to fully die, means something. It means the story is still breathing. It means grace is still active. It means heaven has not signed off on your defeat. This is not coincidence. This is divine intervention. God is calling you back to courage before despair hardens into agreement. He is calling you back to faith before exhaustion talks you into surrender. He is calling you back to the truth that you are held, seen, appointed, and not abandoned. If this message finds you at the exact moment you almost let go, comment 777 as your act of agreement that God is not done with you. Lift your eyes again, breathe again, pray again, believe again. Not because everything around you has changed yet, but because God has not changed. His power is not diminished. His promise is not weakened. His timing is not broken. And your life is not a discarded thing lying at the side of the road. You are still chosen. You are still being shaped. You are still being carried through what you do not yet understand. The chapter feels heavy, but the author is still present. The night feels long, but morning has not been canceled. Your heart feels tired, but heaven is still speaking over you. You were not meant to give up, because God is not done with you. What makes this season so painful is not only that you have been fighting to stay strong, but that part of you cannot understand why the road became this sharp when all you ever wanted was to walk faithfully. That is why the story of Joseph begins to meet you here, not as a distant Bible figure placed on a shelf, but as a living reminder that God often guards his chosen ones in places that feel like abandonment. Joseph did not begin in glory. He began in promise, and then almost immediately sent in misunderstanding. He carried something on his life that others could not bear to witness. He saw ahead before those around him could accept what heaven was revealing. And that is often how it starts for you too. God places something unusual inside you, and instead of being celebrated for it, you are resisted because of it. Joseph was loved by his father, marked in a visible way, and given dreams that pointed toward a future larger than his present condition. But those dreams did not make life easier. They stirred jealousy. They exposed hearts. They drew hidden hatred into the open. What was on him became the reason he was targeted. That part matters, because you have been tempted to think that your trouble means you have stepped outside of God's care. When in truth, some trouble comes because your life carries a signature that the enemy recognizes even before people do. Joseph's brothers did not attack him because he was empty. They attacked him because he represented something they did not understand and could not control. There are moments in your own life that feel just like that field where Joseph walked, unaware that betrayal was already forming around him. You moved forward with sincerity, but someone else's envy was already speaking against you. You showed up in trust, but another person's bitterness had already decided to wound you. And when betrayal comes from a distant place, it hurts. But when it comes from close range, it cuts deeper. Joseph was not thrown aside by strangers first. He was thrown aside by people who knew his name. That is why his story speaks so directly to the ache in you. Some of your deepest discouragement has come from realizing that the pain did not only come from the world outside, it came from circles where you expected safety. Genesis chapter 37 verse 24 says, "And they took him and cast him into a pit, and the pit was emptied and sown. There was no water in it." That verse is simple, but it carries the weight of a spiritual reality many chosen people know too well. The pit was empty, yet it was still a prison. There was no water, yet there was still suffering. Joseph was alive, yet everything around him felt stripped of movement, comfort, and explanation. That is the kind of place you may be standing in now, not dead, but cut off, not destroyed, but surrounded by silence, not abandoned by God, but unable to see how the promise could survive the place you are in. The pit is where the mind starts asking dangerous questions. Was the dream real? Did I hear God wrong? Did favor leave me? Was I only imagining purpose? That is where many people decide to give up, because they confuse the pit with the conclusion. But Joseph's pit was not his conclusion. It was a violent transition between one season and another. It was ugly, unfair, and deeply painful, yet it was not final. That truth matters for you right now. You may be in a season that feels beneath your dignity, beneath your prayers, beneath what you hoped your life would become. But beneath does not mean beyond God's reach. The God who allowed Joseph to enter the pit also prevented the pit from becoming his grave. That is an important distinction. There are places that feel like endings when they are actually narrow crossings. There are seasons that feel like burial when God is still preserving breath, identity, and future inside you. Joseph could not understand the full meaning of the pit while he was inside it. You often cannot either. That is part of the strain of being chosen. God does not always explain the process before he proves his faithfulness through it. Sometimes you only know later that what looked like rejection was divine insulation. What looked like loss was a repositioning. What looked like humiliation was the breaking of pride, fear, dependence, and false support, so that when elevation finally came, it would rest on a stronger inner foundation. Joseph's life was not moving backward in the spirit, even when it looked like it was falling apart in the natural. And this is where your heart must hold steady. The pit can make you believe that nobody sees, nobody hears, and nothing is moving. Yet God was watching Joseph in that darkness. God had not forgotten the dream just because Joseph's circumstances contradicted it. In the same way, your present pain is not proof that heaven has changed its mind about you. Delay is not cancellation. Betrayal is not erasure. The hostility around your life does not have authority to rewrite what God has spoken. It can wound you in its head, but it cannot own your future. It can shake you, but it cannot remove the hand of God from your story. So when you remember Joseph in the pit, remember more than his suffering, and remember that even there, God was preserving a man who would one day stand where none of his brothers could imagine. The dream did not die in the pit. It went underground for a while, and that may be exactly what is happening with you. The promise has not died. It has gone underground, hidden for a season, protected from eyes that would not know how to honor it. What feels like a place of being forgotten may actually be the place where God keeps your future safe until the appointed time. You are hurting? Yes. You are confused. Yet, but like Joseph, you are still held inside a story that has not finished speaking. After the pit, Joseph is not lifted into comfort. He is carried into another form of confinement, one that does not look like a prison at first because it has walls, work, and daily duties. Yet bondage can wear respectable clothing. That is what makes this next stretch of his life so important for you to understand. Sometimes God does not pull you out of one painful place and place you immediately into visible victory. Sometimes He leads you through a season where you are still chosen, still covered, still moving according to purpose, but everything around you feels beneath the promise you carry. Joseph is sold into Egypt, and with that sale, everything familiar is cut away. Home is gone. His father is gone. His language of safety is gone. The coat that marked him is gone. All he has left is the unseen word of God resting over a life that now looks reduced. This is where many hearts grow tired, not in the first shock of suffering, but in the long middle where survival becomes routine. You may know that feeling well. You have already endured the first blow. You have already cried the first tears. You have already faced the first hard truth. But now you are in the long stretch where you still have to wake up, still have to function, still have to keep going while carrying questions that remain unanswered. That is where Joseph meets you again. His life in Potiphar's house is not glamorous. It is disciplined, hidden, and demanding. He serves in a place he never asked to enter, under people he did not choose, in conditions that could have made bitterness his new identity. Yet even there, Joseph does not surrender the inner thread of who he is. This is the difference between being tired and being finished. Tired means your strength feels thin, your heart feels stretched, and your soul aches for relief. Finished means purpose has ended, calling has dissolved, and God has stepped away. Joseph was tired, but he was not finished. He was displaced, but not discarded. He was stripped, but not emptied. Scripture shows that even in slavery, the Lord was with him. That detail changes everything. It means God's presence can remain active in seasons that do not look blessed to the natural eye. It means favor can exist in hidden rooms. It means your environment does not have the final word on your identity. There is a holy strength that develops when you keep showing up in places that do not yet match the promise. Joseph serves with excellence in a season that gave him every excuse to become careless. He remains trustworthy in a life that has been terribly unfair. He does not know when the turning point will come. Yet he refuses to become spiritually lazy just because the road is painful. That is a word for you now. You do not need to understand every delay in order to remain faithful inside it. You do not need full explanation before you choose integrity again. Some of the greatest evidence that God is still with you is not that the burden vanished overnight, but that He keeps producing strength in you that should not exist under the pressure you are carrying. You may have looked at your own life and thought, I should be further by now. I should be lighter by now. I should be clearer by now. But growth in God is not always loud. Sometimes it happens while you are doing ordinary things with a bruised heart. Sometimes it happens when no one applauds your obedience. Sometimes it happens while you are learning how to keep your spirit from hardening. Joseph's hidden season is not empty, it is training. It is where discipline, wisdom, restraint, and endurance begin to take deep root. God is shaping a ruler through the routine of a servant. God is preparing influence in a man who currently has none, and that may be exactly what He is doing in you. Exhaustion whispers dangerous lies. It tells you that because the process is long, the promise is false. It tells you that because you are still serving in obscurity, your life has lost significance. It tells you that because the dream is not visible, it must have faded. But exhaustion is a poor prophet. It reads the moment and calls it forever. It reads pressure and calls it punishment. It reads delay and calls it denial. God does not speak that way. He sees the whole path at once. He knows what this hidden stretch is building in you. He knows how to preserve your calling while also deepening your character. He knows how to keep your spirit alive in the places where lesser strength would have collapsed. That is why you must not despise the season where you are learning to stand tired. There is a difference between pretending to be strong and becoming strong in God. Joseph is becoming strong, not loud, not celebrated. Strong, his roots are going deeper than his circumstances reveal. And because those roots go deep, what comes later will be able to stand. Your own hidden endurance may feel unimpressive to the world, but heaven sees it clearly. Every day you refuse to quit in spirit matters. Every time you choose honesty instead of compromise matters. Every time you keep your heart open before God instead of sealing it in resentment matters. These are not small things. These are the quiet building stones of destiny. So remain steady here. Let Joseph's journey remind you that weariness is not the same as the end. The Lord can be with you in the house of service just as surely as He will be with you in the place of elevation. And if this message is strengthening your spirit, let that support flow naturally. You can like this message, share it with someone who is carrying silent exhaustion, and subscribe so you can keep walking through these words with us. And if you want to help sustain this work, there is also a way to donate through the description. Not as pressure, but as partnership in sending hope where weary hearts are still fighting to believe. For now, hold this close. You may be tired, but like Joseph, you are still being carried by promise. Then the pressure changes its shape. Joseph has already survived the pit, already endured the sale, already learned how to stand in a house that is not his own. And yet the next blow comes with a cruelty that is even harder to carry because it attacks not only his comfort, but his name. This is where many chosen ones begin to stagger inside. You can survive hardship for a while, but when false accusation enters the story, when your integrity is twisted, when your clean hands are repaid with suspicion, something deeper is tested. Joseph has done what is right. He has served faithfully. He has guarded his character. He has resisted temptation. But righteousness does not always produce immediate reward. Sometimes it exposes evil, and evil answers back with lies. That is one of the hardest truths for your heart to accept. You want to believe that if you stay pure, if you stay honest, if you stay faithful, then everything will turn in your favor without delay. But Joseph's life shows that obedience can lead you straight into misunderstanding before it leads you into vindication. He refuses the seduction set before him, not once in weakness, but again and again in strength. He will not betray God, and he will not betray the trust placed over him. Yet the very restraint that should have protected him becomes the setting for a false story. A lie rises against him with enough force to push him from service into prison. This is where the enemy tries to place a poisonous conclusion inside your mind. He whispers that your story is over because your reputation has been wounded. He suggests that one dark chapter has the authority to rename your future. He tries to persuade you that because others misunderstood you, God must have withdrawn from you too. That is the lie beneath giving up. It is not simply the belief that life is hard. It is the belief that hardship has the right to define you. It is the belief that the prison is more truthful than the promise. It is the belief that what was spoken by God can be canceled by what was spoken by people. But Joseph's life refuses that lie. His surroundings change, but his identity before God does not. His location changes but the calling over him does not. His public image is damaged, but heaven is not confused. The Lord never mistakes the innocent for the guilty. God is never manipulated by the version of your story that others tell when they need someone to blame. There may be people who do not understand your silence, your boundaries, your refusal to bend, your decision to walk away from compromise. There may be voices that twist your motives because truth exposes what deception wants to hide. But none of those voices sit on the throne. Psalm chapter 105 verse 18 said, "Whose feet they hurt with fetters, he was laid in iron." That verse reaches into the reality of Joseph's suffering without softening it. It does not pretend that prison was a minor inconvenience. It does not reduce pain into a neat lesson too quickly. His feet were hurt. He was laid in iron. He felt the weight of confinement in his body, not only in his thoughts. This matters because sometimes people speak about endurance as if chosen ones are made of stone, as if they do not feel the crushing force of injustice. But Joseph felt it. You feel it too. The lies wound, the rejection wounds, the waiting wounds, the delay of vindication wounds. God does not ask you to pretend that iron feels like feathers. He asks you not to let the iron tell you who you are. That prison season is where the lie grows loudest. When there is no quick rescue, no immediate public correction, no fast reversal. The mind starts searching for explanations. Maybe I should have compromised. Maybe I should have defended myself differently. Maybe doing right was foolish. Maybe my obedience only made life harder. Those thoughts can move quietly through a tired soul. Joseph could have surrendered to them. He could have allowed resentment to become his new master. He could have let the injustice inside the prison become greater than the God who was with him there. But somehow, in ways both hidden and powerful, his inner life stays open enough for God to continue working through him. That is the holy defiance you are being called into. Not noisy pride, not revenge, not self-glorification, a deeper steadiness, a refusal to let false accusation write the final sentence of your life. The enemy wants your pain to become agreement. He wants your wound to become identity. He wants your delay to become a covenant with hopelessness. He wants you to say, "This is all I am now. This is all my life will ever be." Joseph's story says otherwise. The prison was real, but it was not ultimate. The lie was loud, but it was not sovereign. The iron was heavy, but it did not outweigh God's intention. So when your own life feels misread, when your loyalty is repaid with suspicion, when your obedience costs more than you expected, remember Joseph in the place where everything looked ruined. The promise was not ruined. It was hidden under pressure. The future was not erased. It was passing through a severe chapter that would not last forever. God was still there in the prison, just as surely as he had been there in the pit and the house before it. The Lord had not changed his mind because people had changed their story. And he has not changed his mind about you either. What is false will not rule forever. What is hidden will not remain hidden forever. What God spoke over your life is still alive, even in the place where the lie tries hardest to make you believe your story is over. At the beginning of this part, there is one practical note for the listener who has been feeling mentally drained, unfocused, creatively blocked, or overwhelmed by stress. There is a product called the Genius Wave, also known in some places as Genius Song, presented as a short daily audio experience built around brainwave entrainment and designed to support focus, mental clarity, creativity, memory, calmer emotions, and better rest in just a few minutes a day. For someone who feels mentally scattered, emotionally overloaded, nor too exhausted to think clearly, That kind of tool may sound appealing because it is meant to help address problems like poor concentration, mental fog, stress, and low creative energy. If anyone wants to explore it, the safest way is to check the official information in the description or the pinned comment and be careful with imitations, because only the official source should be used if you decide to try it. Now let your attention return fully to the deeper message, because the true center of this journey is still spiritual. And Joseph's story continues to reveal what pain is doing beneath the surface of your life. By the time Joseph reaches this stage, he has already been betrayed, sold, falsely accused, and locked away. If anyone had a reason to become cold, it was him. If anyone had a reason to say that goodness no longer mattered, it was him. But the wound inside Joseph does not become permission for corruption. That is one of the clearest signs that God is doing something deep in a chosen life. Pain can either poison your calling or prepare it. It can either make you smaller inside or make you more spacious for the weight of future assignment. And in Joseph, you begin to see that his suffering is not only something he survives, it is something that quietly trains him. This is where your own pain must be understood differently. You have looked at some of your wounds as proof that life has taken too much from you. You have looked at betrayal as pure loss, delay as wasted time, loneliness as evidence that you were left behind. Joseph's life does not deny that these things hurt. It simply reveals that hurt and purpose can exist in the same season. The prison is painful, but it is also forming a man who will one day carry extraordinary responsibility without collapsing under power. The hidden years are not empty years. They are training years. Think about what Joseph is learning in the dark. He is learning restraint when anger would be easier. He is learning patience when frustration would be more natural. He is learning how to keep his inner world from being ruled by the injustice around him. He is learning how to remain useful without applause. He is learning how to serve even when he has not been served fairly. These are not small lessons. These are the kind of lessons that prepare a soul to hold influence without becoming cruel. Many people want elevation, but very few are willing to be shaped for it. Joseph is being shaped in places no one admires. Your pain may be doing the same hidden work in you. The rejection you hated may be teaching you how to stand without human approval. The silence you feared may be teaching you how to hear God more clearly than noise ever allowed. The delay that frustrated you may be teaching you endurance, depth, and spiritual weight that instant success could never produce. This is why you must be careful not to define your wounds only by what they took. Some wounds also reveal what they build. Some losses uncover strengths that comfort could never awaken. Joseph also learns compassion in suffering. A person who has never been broken often handles the broken carelessly. A person who has never waited often speaks lightly to those in delay. But Joseph is being formed by hardship into someone who will later understand hunger, fear, powerlessness, and the ache of uncertainty. His pain is enlarging him. It is creating room in him for wisdom with tenderness, authority with humility, and strength with mercy. And that is how God often prepares chosen ones. He does not merely make them impressive. He makes them able to carry other people. That may be why your road has felt so intense. There are lives attached to your obedience that you cannot yet see. There are people your future will touch, people your healing will encourage, people your endurance will help preserve. Joseph does not know it yet, but nations are tied to the making of his character. His family is tied to it. Generations are tied to it. So the process cannot be shallow. It must go deep enough to build a man who will not use power to punish his pain. He must be transformed before he is promoted. And this is where hope begins to rise in a different way. Not the shallow hope that says everything will become easy tomorrow, but the stronger hope that says nothing you suffered in God was meaningless. Your tears have not been random. Your endurance has not been unnoticed. Your hidden battles have not been producing nothing. God has been building inside you while circumstances made it seem like your life was standing still. He has been preparing your spirit to hold what is coming without breaking under it. So do not despise the wounds that drove you closer to God. Do not rush to call the whole season useless because it hurt more than you expected. Joseph's pain is shaping the very vessel that will later carry provision, reconciliation, and wisdom. In the same way, your deepest wounds may be tied to your greatest future impact. What tried to crush you may become the place where God formed your clearest strength. What tried to silence you may become the reason your voice carries authority later. The prison is still painful. Yes, but Joseph is no longer merely trapped. He is being prepared. And so are you. There is a kind of silence that tests the soul more deeply than open conflict ever could. Joseph has already endured betrayal, slavery, false accusation, and prison. But now he enters a quieter pain, the pain of being left in a place where heaven seems silent. This is the season that unsettles many hearts because suffering is one thing, but suffering without explanation feels heavier. You can endure a battle when you see movement. You can keep pressing forward when signs appear along the way. But when the days pass and nothing changes, when the prayer rises and no answer seems to return, when the promise still lives in memory but not yet in sight, that is when the heart begins to ask whether God is still actively at work. Joseph knows that feeling in prison. He interprets the dreams of two men who serve Pharaoh, the cupbearer and the baker. He does not speak from bitterness. He still listens. He still discerns. He still uses the gift that pain could have buried, that matter. Because even in confinement, Joseph remains spiritually alive. He has not let silence turn him into stone. He helps others while still waiting for his own release. He offers clarity while still living in uncertainty. And when he interprets the cupbearer's dream, he asks to be remembered. It is such a human moment, so honest and so tender. He is not pretending he does not want relief. He is not acting as though prison has become easy. He simply asks that when restoration comes to another man, his own suffering will not be forgotten. Yet Joseph is forgotten. That is the ache of this section of the story. Not only the prison, but the delay after hope briefly rises. Not only the burden, but the disappointment of almost, you know that pain too. The conversation that made you think change was finally near. The opportunity that looked promising and then closed. The prayer that seemed on the verge of answer and then stretched into more waiting. The season when you thought, surely now, only to find yourself still in the same room with the same questions. This is where heaven can feel silent. Not because God is absent, but because his timing does not move at the speed of your desperation. Still, silence is not emptiness. God's quietness is never the same as his neglect. While Joseph waits, unseen things are still being arranged. Pharaoh has not yet had the dreams that will shake the palace. The exact moment has not yet arrived when Joseph's gift will meet the need of a nation. The cupbearer has forgotten, but God has not. The prison walls look still, but divine timing is moving outside Joseph's sight. That is what you must hold on to in your own silent season. Just because you cannot trace movement does not mean there is none. Just because the answer has not surfaced does not mean the answer is not forming. God often works below the level of visibility. He prepares people off stage. He aligns moments quietly. He lets things ripen that would fail if they came too early. Joseph may have wanted immediate remembrance, but immediate remembrance would not have brought him to the place God intended. A quicker release without the right opening might have only led to a smaller future. But God's silence was preserving a greater entrance. The delay was not merely postponing Joseph's freedom. It was positioning him for a moment that would carry national consequence. That truth can steady your heart today. The silence around you may be frustrating, but it may also be merciful. There are times when God does not answer quickly because a partial answer would tempt you to settle beneath the fullness of what He intends. There are times when He allows the waiting to continue because the scene is not ready. The hearts involved are not ready. Or you are not yet aware of how much is being built in you through the quiet. Joseph's prison did not only hold him, it matured him, it deepened him. It taught him how to stay soft before God without becoming weak before circumstances. And that may be what God is doing in you now. He may be teaching you how to trust without constant confirmation. He may be teaching you how to remain faithful when applause disappears. He may be teaching you how to keep your gift alive in hidden places instead of only when recognition arrives. That kind of formation is not glamorous, but it is powerful. It creates a faith that is not addicted to visible proof. It creates obedience that does not collapse when results are delayed. It creates an inner life that can stand in palaces later because it first learned how to endure prisons with grace. So do not rush to conclude that silence means abandonment. Joseph's story proves otherwise. Heaven was quiet, but heaven was not inactive. The same is true for you. What you cannot hear clearly yet may still be moving powerfully on your behalf. The thing that feels forgotten may still be under divine attention. The promise that seems delayed may still be drawing closer through arrangements too intricate for your present vision to grasp. And as this message continues to meet you in that hidden place, let your support move naturally with it. You can like this message, share it with someone who has been struggling through a silent season, and subscribe so you can stay connected as this journey unfolds. And if this work has been meaningful to you, there is also a way to donate through the description as a simple act of partnership in helping these words reach more people who are tired, waiting, and trying not to lose heart. For now, stay with the lesson of Joseph. Heaven may seem silent, but silence is not the end of the story. Behind the quiet, God is still arranging time, people, doors, and purpose. Behind the stillness, the next chapter is already taking shape. And when it opens, now you will see that the Lord was not distant for a single moment. He was working in ways too deep for sight, too precise for haste, and too faithful to fail you. There comes a moment in a chosen life when the long hidden season begins to tremble with change, even before the change is fully visible. Joseph has lived through years that seem to bury every sign of his future. He has known the pit, the house of service, the false accusation, the prison, the silence, and the ache of being forgotten. Yet all through that slow breaking, God has been doing something Joseph could not measure while he was inside it. And now the story reaches that sacred edge where suffering and sudden lifting begin to meet. This is the part your spirit must hear with great care, because many people give up just before the ground shifts. They collapse at the doorway because they mistake delay for denial. They walk away in the final hour because the night has lasted longer than they expected. Joseph does not know that his turning point is near until the call comes. That is often how God works. The breakthrough does not always announce itself far in advance. Sometimes it arrives after a long stretch of ordinary pain. Sometimes it rises out of a morning that looks like every other morning before it. Sometimes the chapter changes while your heart is still recovering from the last disappointment. Joseph wakes in prison as a forgotten man, but heaven has already set another movement in motion. Pharaoh has dreamed dreams no one can explain. The palace is troubled. Wisdom is needed. The memory of Joseph, buried for a time in the mind of the cupbearer, is suddenly brought back to the surface. What looked delayed was not lost. What looked forgotten was only waiting for the appointed moment. Genesis chapter 41 verse 14 says, "Then Pharaoh sent and called Joseph, and they brought him hastily out of the dungeon." That single verse carries the force of divine reversal. They brought him hastily. For years, the process was slow. For years, the pain stretched. For years, the answers seemed delayed. But when God's moment arrived, movement came quickly. This is one of the holy mysteries of your walk with God. He may take a long time preparing you, but when the appointed moment opens, what looked impossible can begin to turn with startling speed. The dungeon held Joseph for a season, but it could not hold him forever. The place that once defined his limitation became the place he was called out of in one decisive moment. That is why you must never assume that your current confinement has permanent authority over your future. Notice something else in Joseph's story. When the call comes, he is ready. The years of hidden suffering did not destroy the gift in him. The prison did not silence his discernment. The delay did not erase the wisdom God had been building. This matters deeply for your life. The breaking point before breakthrough is not only about waiting for God to move around you. It is also about allowing Him to mature what is inside you, so that when the door opens, you can walk through it with steadiness. Joseph is not dragged from the dungeon as a bitter, shattered man who has forgotten who God is. He comes forth carrying the very thing the next chapter requires. The hidden years have not emptied him. They have refined him. You may feel that you are standing near such a threshold now. Perhaps nothing looks dramatic yet. Perhaps the walls still seem close. Perhaps the answers are not fully visible. But something in your spirit senses movement. That feeling is not always emotional excitement. Sometimes it is quieter than that. Sometimes it is simply the realization that you cannot remain where you have been forever. Sometimes it is the growing awareness that what once crushed you is no longer defining you in the same way. Sometimes it is the strange peace that begins to settle right before change, as if heaven is strengthening your inner posture for the weight of what is coming next. This is why the breaking point is so intense. It is the place where old pain and new purpose press against each other. One part of you is weary from the battle. Another part of you is being awakened for the next assignment. One part remembers every disappointment. Another part is beginning to sense that God has not brought you this far to abandon you now. Joseph stands in that exact tension. He has every reason to carry the memory of injustice. Yet he also has to step into a moment that requires clarity, not collapse. If he were still ruled by bitterness, he could not stand before Pharaoh with clean discernment. If he were still chained inwardly to the prison, he could not interpret the need of the hour. The suffering had to be deep, but the inner ruin could not be complete. God preserved something alive in him through all of it, and God has preserved something alive in you as well. That is one of the clearest signs that breakthrough can be near. After everything you have endured, there is still a response in your spirit. There is still a capacity to hear. There is still a longing for God. There is still a pulse of purpose under the ashes. That means the fire did not go out. The enemy may have attacked your confidence, your peace, your clarities, and your strength, but he did not gain the right to cancel what God planted in you. The dungeon can delay expression, but it cannot kill divine intention. So hold Joseph's story close in this hour. The years in darkness were real, but they were not the final shape of his life. The breaking point was not the place where he disappeared. It was the place just before heaven called his name into a new chapter. The same God who knew the exact day Joseph would be summoned knows the exact moment your own hidden season will begin to open. Until then, remain ready. Remain inwardly awake. Remain surrendered. The call can come after long silence. The lifting can come after deep crushing. And when it does, you will discover that God was using every painful year to prepare you for the suddenness of his appointed time. When Joseph is brought out of the dungeon, the story does not simply become a tale of relief. It becomes a revelation of restored authority. This matters because many people imagine that if God ever lifts them again, the only blessing will be escape from pain. But God often does more than remove pressure. He restores dignity. He restores clarity. He restores influence. He restores the ability to stand in rooms that once felt far beyond reach. Joseph does not come out of prison merely to breathe easier. He comes out to step into the very arena his suffering has prepared him to carry. That is how God works with chosen ones. He does not waste the crushing. He uses it to build a vessel that can hold weight without breaking. Joseph stands before Pharaoh, and the same man who was once misjudged and confined now speaks with calm discernment. There is no frantic striving in him. There is no need to impress. There is no bitterness leaking out of his words. The hidden years have done something holy in his spirit. They have burned away dependence on appearance. They have broken the need for quick approval. They have taught him how to stand under pressure with a different kind of strength. This is what authority after crushing looks like. It is not loud ego. It is not revenge dressed up as power. It is steadiness. It is clarity. It is a soul that has been trained in dark places and therefore cannot be easily shaken by bright ones. Genesis chapter 41 verse 39 says, "And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, Forasmuch as God hath showed thee all this, there is none so discreet and wise as thou art." That moment is astonishing, but it is not random. Joseph's authority is not an accident. It is the visible fruit of invisible formation. He is entrusted because suffering has deepened him. He is elevated because hidden faithfulness has made room for wisdom. He is recognized because what God built in secret now answers a public need. And that is a word for you now. The seasons that reduced you were not empty. They were shaping the kind of character that can carry what is next. What felt like loss was also construction. What felt like stripping was also preparation. God was making sure that when authority came, it would meet a heart refined enough to use it well. There is something powerful in the way Joseph receives this new place. He does not pretend the old wounds never happened, but neither does he let them rule his posture. He has been crushed, yet he is not crushed in spirit anymore. He has been delayed, yet he does not walk into influence with the desperation of someone trying to prove his worth. He has learned that his life is held by God, not by public opinion, not by circumstances, not by the false stories once spoken over him. That understanding gives him a quiet authority stronger than force. He can lead because he no longer needs his position to heal his identity. God has already begun healing that in the hidden place. This is where many hearts need to be restored. You may still believe that what you have gone through disqualified you from walking in strength again. You may think the crushing was too severe, the delay too long, the opposition too heavy. But Joseph's life stands before you as living proof that God knows how to bring a person out of confinement and place them in influence without losing the tenderness he built through pain. The crushing did not destroy Joseph's purpose. It purified it. The years of obscurity did not bury his destiny, and they anchored it. And now the authority placed on him is not shallow. It has roots. It has humility. It has weight. That is what God wants to restore in you. Not only external change, but inner authority. The ability to think clearly again. The courage to make decisions without fear ruling every step. The grace to stand upright after seasons that tried to bend your soul. The wisdom to carry responsibility without becoming proud. The peace to move forward without dragging every chain from the past into the next room. Real restoration is not merely getting out. It is becoming strong enough to walk forward differently. Joseph is given responsibility over a kingdom's resources because he has already learned responsibility over his own spirit. Before he governed a nation, he learned restraint in temptation. Before he managed abundance, he endured lack. Before he was trusted with public leadership, he was faithful in hidden service. Nothing was wasted. Every hard chapter became part of the architecture of the man now standing in authority. That should encourage you deeply. The pieces of your life that seemed scattered may still be fitting together under God's hand. The tears, the waiting, the silence, the endurance, the lessons learned in loneliness, all of it can become strength in the next chapter. So do not fear the idea of rising again. Do not resist your own restoration because pain made smallness feel safer. There comes a time when chosen ones must stop identifying only with the prison and begin receiving the authority God is placing back into their hands. Not authority to dominate, but authority to live, to build, to discern, to bless, to stand, to serve with power and humility together. Joseph's story says that after the crushing comes a season where clarity returns and dignity is restored. If this truth is settling into your spirit, comment "I rise again." Let that be more than words. Let it become your posture before God. The same Lord who carried Joseph through betrayal, bondage, false accusation, prison, and silence also brought him into a place of restored influence. And the same God is able to restore what pressure tried to crush in you. Your authority is not gone forever. Your clarity is not lost forever. Your future is not buried in the ruins of the past. God still knows how to lift, establish, and entrust the one who stayed faithful in the dark. Now the story reaches the place where the evidence becomes undeniable. God is not only able to preserve a chosen life through suffering, He is able to bring that life into fulfillment so clearly that even the ones who wounded it must stand before the outcome. Joseph's journey moves from personal survival into visible proof. The dreams that once seemed impossible are no longer distant images from youth. They begin to take form in the real world, in the movement of nation, in the hunger of the land, and in the return of the very brothers who once threw him away. This is the part of the story that shows you something essential. What God ordains does not disappear because people resist it. It may pass through deep waters. It may go underground for years. It may look delayed beyond reason. But when the appointed time arrives, what was spoken in secret can stand in public with unmistakable force. The famine comes just as Joseph had said. The years of abundance are followed by years of lack. And the wisdom God placed in Joseph becomes the means by which countless lives are preserved. This is already proof that God was not done with him in the prison. But then a deeper proof appears. His brothers come to Egypt seeking food. The very men who once treated Joseph as disposable now stand in need of what God built in the life they tried to break. There is no clearer sign that heaven has been writing a larger story all along. The one cast down has been raised up. The one hidden has been revealed. The one wounded has become a vessel of provision. Genesis chapter 50 verse 20 says, "But as for you, ye thought evil against me, but God meant it unto good and to bring to pass, as it is this day, to save much people alive." That verse is one of the clearest declarations in all of Scripture that what harmed you does not get the final interpretation of your life. Joseph does not deny the evil. He does not pretend betrayal was kindness. He does not rename cruelty as something harmless. He says plainly that evil was intended. But then he reveals a greater truth. God's intention was greater than their intention. Divine purpose ran deeper than human malice. The wound was real, but the meaning of the story did not belong to the wound. That is the revelation you must carry now. Many things in your life may have been meant to diminish you, discourage you, silence you, or break your trust. But what others meant for harm does not outrank what God means for redemption. Joseph's brothers do not recognize at first that they are standing before the brother they betrayed. That detail carries such weight. Sometimes the people who misread you in one season cannot recognize what God has made of you in another. They remember the version of you they dismissed. They remember the vulnerable place where they thought they had reduced your future. But they do not understand what God was building while you were hidden. Joseph is no longer the young dreamer in the field wearing his father's coat. He is now a man formed by suffering, wisdom, restraint, and divine timing. The promise did not merely survive, it matured. That is how God's faithfulness often appears. He does not simply bring you back to where you were before the pain. He brings you forward into something deeper. Joseph is not restored to the innocence of his early life. He is established in the strength of a tested life. His reconciliation is not shallow sentiment. It is the fruit of a heart that has been transformed enough to hold power without using it for revenge. This is part of the proof that God is still writing. Not only that doors open, but that your spirit changes. Not only that the dream survives, but that you become the kind of person who can carry fulfillment without becoming captive to old bitterness. And this is where Joseph's story turns directly toward your own. You may still be in a place where the full picture is not visible. You may not yet see how the broken pieces will fit together. But Joseph shows what fulfillment looks like when God has had time to finish what he began. The pain is not erased from memory, yet it is no longer ruling the future. The betrayal is not celebrated, yet it is no longer defining identity. The years of delay are not wasted, because they have become part of the road by which purpose arrived. What once looked like the destruction of the dream has become the strange and holy path by which the dream came to life. There is also something else here that matters deeply. Joseph's fulfillment is connected to the saving of others. His story was never only about him. The suffering, the delay, the shaping, the elevation, all of it became part of a larger mercy. Lives were preserved because Joseph did not give up in the pit. Lives were preserved because he did not surrender in slavery. Lives were preserved because false accusation did not kill the gift in him. Lives were preserved because prison did not become his final identity. In the same way, your endurance matters beyond what you can currently measure. There may be people attached to your obedience, people who will eat because you did not collapse, people who will find hope because you kept trusting God through seasons that made no sense. So when you ask for signs that God is not done with you, remember Joseph. A living spirit after prolonged suffering is a sign. A gift that still breathes under pressure is a sign. Wisdom born from pain is a sign. Doors that open at the appointed time are a sign. A heart that can forgive without denying truth is a sign. The ability to look back and see that evil did not win is a sign. Joseph's story is not merely history, it is witness. It stands as testimony that delay is not denial, that betrayal is not the end, and that God's purposes can outlive every attack sent against them. By the end of this part of the journey apace, the message is unmistakable. What was delayed was never denied. What was attacked was never abandoned. What was hidden was never forgotten. God was writing all along, and if He wrote so faithfully through Joseph's years of confusion, confinement, and loss, then you can trust Him with your own unfinished chapter. The proof may not yet be complete in your sight, but the author has never left the page. So now you come to the moment where the message turns fully toward you. Because Joseph's journey has done what it was meant to do. It has shown you that God keeps His hand on a life even through betrayal, delay, false accusation, silence, and long hidden years. It has shown you that what looked like the end was never the end. It has shown you that the pit was not final, the prison was not final, the forgetting was not final, and the pain was not final. And if that is true for Joseph, then you must let this truth settle deeply into your own spirit. You are not standing at a dead end. You are standing in a chapter that still answers to God. You are not a discarded life. You are not a wasted calling. You are not a closed story. God is not done with you. There are people listening right now who have been surviving more than living. You have been waking up, moving through the day, carrying responsibilities, saying the necessary words, doing what must be done, yet deep inside you have felt dimmed by the weight of everything that has happened. You have wondered whether your best strength is behind you. You have wondered whether trust can rise again after so much disappointment. You have wondered whether your heart can become tender again after fighting so long just to remain standing. This final step is for that place in you, not the polished place, not the strong public place, the hidden place, the tired place, the part of you that still aches when no one is looking. God is calling that part of you forward now, not by shame, not by force, by truth. He is calling you to rise again, not because the road has been easy, but because His mercy has held you through every hard mile. He is calling you to trust again, not because people have been perfect, but because He has remained faithful. He is calling you to hope again, not because you can control the future, but because the one who writes it has never lost sight of you. This is the hour to stop making an agreement with defeat. This is the hour to stop speaking over yourself as though the worst thing that happened to you has the right to define you forever. This is the hour to remember that the same God who carried Joseph through years of contradiction is still able to carry you into a chapter that reflects His promise. Rising again does not always begin with something dramatic. Sometimes it begins with a simple turning of the heart, a quiet yes, a deep breath offered back to God, a decision to believe one more time, a choice to stop feeding the lie that says nothing can change, a choice to pray even while your voice still shakes, a choice to trust that what feels buried may still be alive under God's hand. That is where renewal often starts, not in noise, but in surrender. Not in performance, but in a heart that says, Lord, I am still here, and I place what remains of me before you. So let this become prayer in the most natural way. Father, in the name of Jesus, meet this weary heart right now. Reach into the places that have grown heavy with disappointment and breathe life again. Where there has been fear, release peace. Where there has been confusion, release clarity. Where there has been shame, release mercy. Where there has been delay, release endurance. Where there has been silence, release the assurance that you have never left. Heal what has been bruised by betrayal. Strengthen what has been weakened by long waiting. Restore what pressure tried to crush. Lift this listener out of agreement with despair and bring them back into agreement with your truth. Let hope rise again. Let courage rise again. Let clean vision rise again. And just as you preserved Joseph through every dark place, preserve this precious life for the purpose you still intend to fulfill. Let this next chapter be marked by wisdom, stability, healing, and holy strength. In Jesus' name, amen. Now stay with that for a moment. Let those words settle. Let them move through the places in you that have been clenched for too long. You do not have to force the whole future into view today. You only have to take the next faithful step. Joseph did not see the full ending when he was in the pit. He did not see it in slavery. He did not see it in prison. But step by step, God remained God. That is your comfort now. You do not need the whole map in order to move with the shepherd. You need the next grace, the next breath, the next act of trust. And God knows how to supply all of it. So walk forward from here with a different voice in your spirit. Not the voice of surrender, not the voice of self-burial, not the voice that says it is too late. Walk forward with the voice that says God is still writing. Walk forward with the voice that says what was attacked is still under divine protection. Walk forward with the voice that says the hidden years were not empty. Walk forward with the voice that says the Lord who began this work will not abandon it halfway through the process. And if this message has spoken to you, let your response be gentle but real. You can like this message, share it with someone who needs to hear that God is not done with them, and subscribe so you can stay connected to more messages that strengthen faith in hidden seasons. And for those who want to support this work in a deeper way, there is also a donation option in the description, offered simply as a way to help these messages reach more hearts that are hanging on in silence. Take this final truth with you. You were never meant to give up, not because you are naturally unbreakable on your own, but because God's purpose is stronger than the night that came against you. God's mercy is deeper than your exhaustion. God's timing is wiser than your fear. God's hand is steadier than your emotions. And your life still carries meaning, assignment, and holy possibility. Rise again, trust again, walk again. God is not done with you as this message comes to rest. Let peace remain with you. You do not have to rush out of this moment. Let the story of Joseph stay near your heart as a witness that God remains faithful in every hidden place. When you feel tired, remember the pit was not the end. When you feel forgotten, remember the prison was not the end. When you feel delayed, remember the promise was still alive. Your story is still under God's care. Even now, He is able to restore strength, renew vision, and guide your next step with quiet faithfulness. Stay close to Him. Guard your heart from despair. Refuse the lie that says nothing good can come from what you have endured. The Lord is still able to bring purpose out of pain, wisdom out of waiting, and beauty out of broken places. Walk in peace today, and let hope remain alive within you. Because the God who carried you this far will not fail you now.